Hello.
You wanted to tell me a story about when you visited Honduras for a medical center type?
It was a medical trip to bring medical care and medical supplies to a community in the rural southwestern part of Honduras
Mm.
in 2002, which
Okay.
would be quite a few years ago.
Could you tell me more about this story?
An organization called Cape Cares um, has been for over 20 years um, going into Honduras, into 3 different communities, with doctors, dentists, nurses, and support staff, bringing medical supplies and providing medical care. Because the infrastructure of Honduras essentially does not provide adequate medical care for any of the rural parts of Honduras, and even in their cities, medical care is limited, especially for people who are quite poor, and that is probably the largest number of people living in Honduras. The way in which the care is then delivered by Cape Cares is for people like myself, doctors, dentists, nurses, saying, okay, I will go for a week and work as a nurse or a doctor or a dentist, taking care of people. And then show up at Logan Airport and off we go to Tegucigalpa for a week. And Cape Cares provides, there's continuity of care. It's not just that we go for a week and then nobody goes back. Every month, teams go into 3 different cities. And this particular El Algogadano, where I went, every 3 months has a team of people that visit. So if we prescribed a blood pressure medicine in February, by the time the team gets back there in May, we'll see was it effective or not. And I heard about this through someone who told me, and I thought, that's a good idea. I think I will go. So I went, and it was challenging, eye-opening, and fun. All of those things combined, and as a consequence, their health improved. We heard stories about a pediatrician that I went with, along with other people, said that he had been like 7 years before, and they said that one of the things he did as a pediatrician to say children have to be wearing shoes and children have to be taking vitamins. And as a consequence, 7 years later, the children no longer had bad worms and the children flourished. They were much healthier. Preventive care would be really important, and that's why I think vitamins, for one thing, it encourage and it support kids being much healthier. At first, I was very anxious. Everything was very new. And as a relatively tall person, and Hondurans, for the most part, are very small and short people, I was a little anxious about myself and how helpful or not I could be, and how much or not they could understand me or I could understand them. And I think part of what I come away from that experience with, that speaking the language would have been even more useful, still would be useful for me. But I am, of the many skills I have, languages are not one of them, so I struggle mightily with Spanish. I think I felt useful. It's always been important for me to feel useful. I'm not certain I was happy. I wasn't. I think I had a sense of comfort. At times was quite fearful of just the natural environment. We stayed in a motel, and then drove up into the mountains. And driving up some very steep mountainous roads, praying and hoping we got there and that things didn't fall out of the truck. After we did that a couple of times, I felt much more comfortable with the physical environment. I felt pleased that here we were, looking out after people I would never see again, and I had absolutely no sense except I wanted us to take care of them, to provide them with things they don't have. And the other part of how I felt was enraged. We all took for granted the very simple things that we had, and the people we were providing medicine for or pulling teeth for. Unless people committed themselves like we had, they would probably not have gotten care. It left me a little agitated. Not so much when I was there, but just seeing the huge difference between the way in which people lived in this very rural, mountainous community and the way in which I lived, or the people I came in contact with lived, left me feeling uneasy. It was so totally different from any experience I had ever had in my life, even though I grew up on a rural New England dairy farm where we were out in the woods and lived out of doors. It wasn't quite the same. Well, it still does, actually. It still does. And I hadn't looked at these photographs or thought about this since I was there. How this particular experience impacted me is it's made me both aware of how much I have and how much we don't have. And as a consequence, I have since then, so I went back to my suburban office and I said, I'm too angry with these people who have everything they need and want, blah, blah, blah. So for the last 30 years, I have worked, getting paid, I have worked, but I have worked as a professional medical person in community, in what we would consider marginalized communities. So I taking from this experience, I think I have felt committed to providing medical and clinical services. So there you are. There you are.
Thank you for this interview.
You're entirely welcome. My pleasure.